This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. I just did an episode comparing different filter media for DE filters, and I thought I would do a podcast comparing the cartridge filters for a cartridge filter replacement. There are a lot of brands of cartridge filter replacements out there, so I'll touch on some of my preferred brands of cartridge replacements and some things to look for when you're looking for a new cartridge for your filter. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy coaching program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. Let me give you some parameters for when to change your cartridges. Now, if you have a large cartridge filter, 4 quad type cartridges in the filter itself, typically I'll change those every 3 years without question, sometimes sooner depending on the pool use and the condition and the environmental area that you're in. If you're in a really dirty area or a lot of dust, then you will change them more often. If the pool turned on you and turned green, then you probably wore out the cartridges in some fashion there, and you may have to change it before the 3-year mark. If you have a single cartridge filter or a single bullet filter, typically those will wear out within 6 months to 9 months to a year, depending. How you can tell if those are worn out: if you clean them and then you put the filter back together, the PSI should be just a little bit under 20 PSI, and then within a week or two, if it goes to 30 PSI, that pretty much indicates that those cartridge filters, the single cartridge filter, is worn out. You also will notice a lot less flow coming into the skimmer and out the return jets. That's also another indication that that cartridge filter is worn out. Simply replacing that will make a big difference. The quad cartridge filters are a little hard to discern when they're worn out because they don't really affect the flow of the pool. And I notice in most cases the PSI doesn't really go up past 20, even when the cartridges are worn out or really dirty. And so the way I kind of gauge that is by simply changing those every 3 years regardless. And sooner, sometimes if the bands are broken or if the top is cracked, you want to change those sooner. You always want to put 4 new cartridges in. They usually sell them in a set of 4 anyway, and it's better to change all 4 at the same time. They are sized specifically for the filter that you have, and you can go online and you can pretty much search the model number of your filter pretty easily. I'll give you an example here how to find the cartridges pretty easily online and at your supplier. For example, you can go on Google and find the actual model number of your filter. Let's say you have a Pentair Clean & Clear Plus 420, and the actual OEM model number for those cartridges are the R173576, and that's basically the model number, and it'll give you the length and the diameter. So they're 26 inches in length and 7 inches in diameter. And it used to be when you take a cartridge into a pool shop or your supplier, they had this chart on the counter with these circles on it. You would just take the cartridge and match it up, and then you would be able to get the cartridge replacement even if you didn't know the model number. But you can pretty much find it pretty easily if you search just with the model number, and you'll see alternates like the Pleatco. The model number for the Pleatco replacement for the Clean & Clear Plus 420 is PCC105. The Filbert is FC-1977, and the Unicell is model C-7471. And by the way, those are 3 brands that I would recommend. I'll touch on that in a minute here as I continue. So you can find either the OEM replacement, which is the original manufacturer cartridge for your filter, or an off-brand one. Most people and most pool companies go with an off-brand cartridge because most suppliers carry them. They're a little bit less cost for the customer, and they work, in my opinion, just as good as the original manufactured cartridge that comes with the filter. The only filter you may have trouble finding anything but the brand, the manufactured cartridges, would be the Stay Right System 3 filter. These are the filters that look like a bad droid in a science fiction Star Wars type thing, and they have those 8 clamps on the side. They have a large filter. They have a large circular donut cutout filter, not really a donut I should say, and then they have a small filter directly in the center. Actually not too small either. This is a gigantic cartridge filter setup, and usually you have to buy the Stay Right brand of this filter. Fortunately, this particular filter type doesn't have the 3-year mark that the other ones have, and these can go sometimes 6 or 7 years in my opinion, because they're just a really robust cartridge media, and they're just, the way they're designed is to last a lot longer than the standard cartridge filter. So these are the ones that you're going to have to just get the manufactured cartridge for, and they're pretty expensive for the replacement on these, and that's why I don't change these every 3 years if I can avoid it. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. And I get questioned on the antimicrobial filter cartridges. These are the ones that are like a blue cartridge. They're coated with this antimicrobial on the cartridges themselves, and they may even have patented material like the Microban. And Filbert, Unicell, and Pleats make these. Are these something that you should get for your pool? Well, I mean, they can, in a limited fashion, protect the cartridge material itself from bacteria and biofilm, and they do somewhat help prevent odor when you open the filter up. And these are mainly for spas, I think, or hot tubs versus pools. I really think that they don't do much for a pool because you have sanitizer and disinfectant in there, and they should do the job. They won't protect against algae, of course, or anything like that, and they're not going to make the cleaning period any longer between cleanings of the cartridge filter. They may be good for hot tubs and spas because they're a pretty small body of water, and there's a lot of gunk in there, so it depends on what you want to, what their use is for. I think for hot tub and spas, these would be a great choice for you, but for a regular pool and spa, I probably wouldn't recommend the antimicrobial protection on the cartridge. I don't think it's really necessary. So there are a lot of course, manufactured brands of cartridge filters. You have Pentair, Hayward, and Jandy, and then you have Waterway, which uses, I think, in most cases, a Pleat Coat branded cartridge filter. And then you have, of course, Jacuzzi, which also uses a Pleat Coat. Then you have Astral Pools, which is in Australia. They have their own cartridge. Cal Spas makes their spa filters. And American Products, which is the old Pentair brand. I don't think they make those anymore, but if you have an old filter, you probably don't have the American Product cartridges in there. They have to be pretty ancient at that point, because I think Pentair bought that one in the 80s or 90s, a long time ago. Now, there's a lot of other brands, and they have expanded over the years as far as these non-OEM branded cartridge filters. The most recognizable will be Pleat Coat because they bought the back of Aqua Magazine for for 15 years. They were on the back of there. They had the Perfect Pool Guy and Pool Gal contest for many, many years, and they ran that. And so they had a lot of marketing. They were pretty small. And by the way, they were bought out by Pentair about 3 or 4 years ago. So Pentair owns Pleat Coat now, and I'm not sure how the contracts are going to be honored with those companies like Waterway or Jacuzzi using Pleat Coat. I'm sure there's some kind of clause in there that they can't just stop sending those cartridges to them. I don't know, but they may be pretty safe. Aquastar also uses a Pleat coat cartridge for their pipeline filter. So something to be aware of, that Pentair owns Pleat coat now, but I don't think much will change as far as that goes. Then you have Filbert and Unicel, which are here in California, and they make a really good cartridge in my opinion. These are the ones that may be branded by your wholesale outlet location. If you buy the branded version from Pool Corp, which is Superior, or SCP, or Heritage Pools may have a branded cartridge. And that basically just says it's basically one of these, Unicel, Filbert, Pleat coat, and then they just put the stamp on the box, Superior Pool Products or whatever. And that's not another manufacturer, it's just a branded cartridge. Same with Jacuzzi and Waterway. They don't necessarily manufacture a cartridge filter for the cartridge filters that they sell. It's just one of these off-brand manufacturers that do make cartridge filters already that will put them in there at the factory, and then when you take it apart and clean it, you're going to see maybe the Pleat coat label or the Filbert label on the filter. There's another one that I like. They're called XL filters. They used to be right here, like 10 minutes from my house actually, where I live. They had a factory, but then they moved to Texas, so I actually visited the factory and it was close by. Got to meet the people there. They make them in-house. They're a really good cartridge filter. You can find them, the XL filters. I think they're great. They have very similar material to the Pleat coat cartridges, but not quite the same. I'll go over the material of the cartridges also, and some build quality too. And a few more brands that you may find on there are EcoPure, Pool Line, Blue Wave, Extreme Power USA, Intex. Those are all companies that make cartridge filters as well. So here are some kind of things to look for when you're getting a cartridge filter. The reason why I like Filbert, Unicel, and Pleat coat, there's something called precision fit with these cartridges. Now, Pleat coat, I've had some trouble sometimes getting the set into the cartridge, into the filter itself on the bottom, particularly on the Pentair Clean and Clear Plus filters. I've had trouble with Pleat coat filters just not going in to the bottom well. And that's going to happen because they're not the OEM filters, but now the Pentair makes them. That's probably worked out. This is a while back when I was having some trouble. The Filbert and Unicel usually fit really well in any filter you put them into. And I think one of the problems with the Pleat coat is that they use a really hard plastic on the top and bottom for those parts, and they're really durable. And since they're not quite as pliable as the Filbert Unicel, they're going to be a little harder to push on initially. And it's once you get them on, they kind of stretch out a little bit and they stay on there. But it's because the cap, the top and bottom cap, are a much harder plastic and much more durable. And that's why the fit may not feel as good. But if you buy an off-brand filter, and besides the Unicel, Filbert, XL, or Pleat coat, you may have trouble with the fit. So keep that in mind as well, that some of the manufacturing is not as consistent with that. And since I'm talking about the caps on top and bottom, the plastic caps, some are made out of more of a rubber material, and they may crack easily under pressure. Others are a really hard plastic, like the Pleat coat ones I mentioned. So this is also part of the quality of the filter, because if the top cracks, if that cap cracks, it's going to let dirt and debris back into the pool, not filter efficiently. And you'll notice right away when you take it apart, take the top manifold off, you'll see cracks on top of that plastic cap. Not a good thing, and that has to be replaced. The other thing is the bands on the filters. Some manufacturers glue them on really well. The lower quality ones aren't glued on that well. And it's important to have the bands on there, except for the Pleat coat, which has a bandless one, except one band on the bottom. And it's because the material is different than the other cartridge materials. But the bands actually keep the pleats from expanding. The tighter the pleats are, when you get a brand new filter, you're going to see that you can't even see in between the pleats because they're pretty tight on there. But as time goes on, and if the bands start to break, those pleats will expand, and that actually affects the square footage of the cartridge filter. You're going to get less square footage and less filtration, and eventually you may even have a tear if the pleats keep expanding to that point. So the bands are also important, and some manufacturers do a better job with the bands than others. The lower price cartridge filters may not have bands that are glued on there really well. And of course, Pleat coat would always have really durable bands on their cartridge filters. And I think Unicell and Filbert also have pretty good bands for the cartridge filters. If you have a quad type cartridge filter, this is really important because you want these to last 3 years. So, the end caps, some of them are molded on there, some are glued, some have more UV resistance than others. Not a super important factor, but the durability of the end caps is an important thing. The durability of the pleats is also another important thing to consider. And the material itself is also important. You have what is pretty standard in the industry, which is called Remay, and this, of course, is used by Unicell and Filbert. And then, of course, Pleatco uses a different kind of material, and Excel Filter uses a different material as well. It's a little bit more durable than the Remay. Some pool pros like Remay. They like the paper feel. They feel like it cleans better, easier to clean. And the Remay material, some people think, is superior than the Pleatco or Excel Filter material. You'll feel the difference right away when you have a Unicell filter and you have a Pleatco filter. The Pleatco filter has a more plastic feel to it, more like almost like a Quad DE cartridge filter. That's the kind of feel that the Pleatco has, and then the other ones feel more like paper. It really, to me, I've used all of them. I really can't say that there's a huge difference between the Pleatco cartridge filter and the Filbert Unicell Remay versus kind of the Pleatco material. But you may notice a difference and you may gravitate towards one over another. But I don't think the difference is really earth-shattering if you get any of the brands that I speak about here. Now, of course, you can buy some pretty inexpensive cartridges on Amazon. I would probably take those with a grain of salt because they may not, again, have the end caps molded on there. They may just be glued on. They may start to crack. The bands may not last as long. And so you may not get the 3 years you're going to need out of those with the quad type filters. If you have a single cartridge filter, I guess it doesn't matter too much, because if you have to change it in 8 months versus 9 months, not a huge deal breaker. But I would really stick with some of these manufacturers that have been around a long time. And, you can't go wrong with Unicell. You can't go wrong with Filbert or Pleatco or the Excel cartridge filters, really. And if you really want to get the OEM cartridge filters, of course, they're going to be very similar to the ones that have been in your filter. If you have a newer filter and you're changing them, they're going to be very similar to that. So there's nothing wrong with going with the OEM, Pentair, Jandy, or Hayward cartridges. But again, most people go with one of these other brands once the cartridges wear out and a new filter. And they are really well manufactured, in my opinion, and a great replacement for the OEM cartridges for your filter. If you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon. I'll have 1,700 podcasts for you to listen to there. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel Monday through Friday to get a podcast sent to you each day. And if you're interested in my coaching program, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.